The medical frigate Gentle Hope drifted through neutral space, its hull painted with the universal symbols of healing. Inside, Dr. Linda Walsh checked on the last of the refugee children. The plague had swept through the colony world fast, killing thousands before anyone understood what was happening. Her crew had worked for 3 days straight, loading every survivor they could find. "Final count is 4,000 souls," her assistant reported. "The other 2 ships have 8,000 between them." Linda nodded, exhaustion weighing on every movement. 12,000 people saved from certain death. 3 frigates carrying nothing but medical supplies and hope. The journey back to human space would take 6 days, but they would make it. They always did. The explosion came without warning. The frigate to their left, Mercy's Hand, simply vanished in a ball of fire. Linda stumbled as alerts screamed throughout her ship. Through the viewport, she saw the second frigate, Kind Tomorrow, trying to turn away. Weapons fire tore through its engines. It spun helplessly before another volley punched through the medical bays. "Who's attacking us?" Linda shouted. "We're clearly marked as non-military." The communications officer's hands shook as he worked. "Ma'am, it's Torathi supremacy vessels, 5 heavy cruisers. They're broadcasting this on entertainment channels across their empire." Entertainment. They were dying for entertainment. Linda grabbed the intercom. "All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation. Get everyone to the pods now." The Gentle Hope shuddered as the first hit struck home. Systems failed across the board. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency reds. In the medical bays, children screamed. Parents clutched them tight, knowing there weren't enough escape pods for everyone. Linda ran through the corridors, helping people toward safety. A young mother thrust her baby into Linda's arms. "Please save her. I'll find another way." "No, we go together," Linda insisted. The woman smiled sadly and pushed Linda toward the pod. "Tell her I loved her." The hull breached. Atmosphere screamed out into space. Linda felt herself pulled backward, the baby clutched to her chest. Strong hands grabbed her, dragging her into a pod. The door sealed. Through the small window, she saw the mother floating away, already unconscious from vacuum exposure. The pod ejected. Around them, dozens of other pods launched into the black, but not enough. Never enough. The Torathi cruisers moved methodically, destroying the 3 frigates completely. Then they turned their weapons on the escape pods. One by one, the small lifeboats burst like bubbles. Linda held the baby close, waiting for the end. It never came. Her pod drifted, overlooked, or ignored. She watched the Torathi ships leave, their task complete. Of 12,000 people, perhaps 200 pods had made it out. Maybe 800 souls total. Maybe. The baby in her arms began to cry. 2 days later, Owen Hayes sat in the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The young human delegate looked nothing like the warriors other species feared from old legends. He wore simple clothes, carried no weapons, and spoke softly. But his eyes held something the Council had never seen in a human before. Rage, carefully controlled and precisely directed. The Torathi ambassador stood at the speaker's podium, his multiple limbs gesturing dismissively. "The Torathi supremacy regrets the unfortunate incident in neutral space. However, our vessels mistook the human medical ships for military transports. The similarities in design are significant." "Lies," Owen said quietly. The council chamber fell silent. Humans never interrupted proceedings. They always followed protocol. Owen stood, holding up a data tablet. "Your ships broadcast the attack on entertainment networks. Your commanders described it as hunting soft targets. There was no mistake. You murdered 12,000 civilians, including 4,000 children, for sport." The Torathi ambassador laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The human makes dramatic claims. Where is your proof?" Owen activated the tablet. The council chambers filled with the broadcast from Torathi networks. They watched the frigates explode. They heard the Torathi crews celebrating each kill. They saw escape pods hunted down one by one. Several council members looked away. Others stared in horror. The Quelari representative began to weep openly. "We demand immediate reparations," the Torathi ambassador said, as if he hadn't just been exposed. "Human medical ships violated our claimed territory." "Neutral space belongs to no one," Owen replied. "As defined by council law you helped write." The council head, an elderly Veshkari, raised his hand for silence. "The council will review this matter. Surely compensation can be arranged." "We don't want compensation," Owen said. "Then what do you want?" the Veshkari asked. Owen looked directly at the Torathi ambassador. "We want justice. We want accountability. We want you to stand before this council and admit what you did." The Torathi ambassador's laugh echoed through the chamber. "Or what? Will the peaceful humans make threats? Will you stamp your feet and cry more? You are soft, weak. You build hospitals instead of warships. You heal instead of harm. The galaxy knows what you are." Owen pulled out a small device. With one press, he transmitted a message directly to Earth. The message contained one word: confirmed. "You're right," Owen said calmly. "The galaxy knows what we were, what we chose to become after centuries of war. We decided peace was better. We decided healing was stronger than hurting." He gathered his papers, preparing to leave the council chamber. "But you've reminded us of something important," Owen continued. "We didn't forget how to fight. We just chose not to. That choice is now revoked." The Veshkari leaned forward. "What are you saying?" Owen stopped at the door. "I'm saying that as of 2 minutes ago, the Unified Assembly of Earth has formally declared war on the Torathi supremacy. Our fleets are already mobilizing. Our shipyards are already working. And every single human who survived your attack is telling their story." "You can't win," the Torathi ambassador said. "We have 8,000 warships. You have barely 200. "Numbers don't win wars," Owen replied. "Will does. And you just gave 4 billion humans a reason to show you what we're capable of when we stop being peaceful." He left the chamber. Behind him, the council erupted into chaos. The Torathi ambassador continued laughing, confident in his empire's strength. He had no idea what was coming. On Earth, the factories began to wake. The shipyard worker named Paulo Silva had spent 30 years building cargo haulers. Big, slow ships that moved grain and medicine between colonies. His hands knew every bolt, every weld, every system that kept those peaceful giants running. He never thought he'd see those same hands building weapons. "How many?" he asked his supervisor. "All of them," came the reply. "Every hauler, every transport, every ship that can mount a weapon system. Earth needs them ready in 5 days." Paulo looked across the massive lunar construction bay. Hundreds of workers swarmed over vessels, tearing out cargo holds and installing missile tubes. The ship he'd spent 2 months building as a grain hauler was being transformed into something deadly. "5 days is impossible," Paulo said. His supervisor handed him a tablet showing images from the attack, the medical frigates exploding, the escape pods being hunted, the children. "Make it possible," the supervisor said quietly. Paulo worked for 72 hours straight. So did everyone else. They didn't talk about quotas or shift schedules. They just worked. When Paulo finally collapsed from exhaustion, 2 younger workers caught him, gave him stimulants and water, and sent him back to the task. 3 days later, 40 converted ships launched from lunar orbit. They weren't pretty. They weren't sophisticated, but they could fight. Proxima Station orbited a dim red star at the edge of human space. 50,000 colonists lived there, farming algae and mining asteroids. They knew the Torathi fleet was coming. Long-range scanners had detected 1,200 warships headed their way. Station Commander Alice Park received orders from Earth. "Evacuate everyone." "What about the station?" she asked. Defend it as long as you can, the response came. Every hour you buy us matters. Alice understood. She wasn't being asked to win, just to delay. The evacuation ships left carrying every civilian. Alice watched them go, feeling the station grow quiet around her. Only 400 volunteers remained, all military veterans who'd retired to peaceful lives. They'd chosen to come back for one last fight. 40 ships incoming, her tactical officer reported. Our converted haulers from Luna. Alice smiled grimly. 40 civilian vessels against 1,200 Torathi warships. The math was terrible, but math didn't account for rage. The Torathi fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Fleet Marshal Drenvik commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that had destroyed 17 worlds. He expected immediate surrender. Instead, his sensors showed 40 human ships forming a defensive line. "What are those?" his tactical officer asked. Drenvik zoomed in on the sensor data. "Cargo ships, mining vessels, they've welded missile pods to grain haulers." His bridge crew laughed. The idea was absurd, desperate, pathetic. "Destroy them quickly," Drenvik ordered. "I want to be drinking victory wine before sunset." The Torathi fleet advanced in perfect formation, confident and professional. The human ships didn't move. They waited, engines cold, systems quiet. "Why aren't they running?" the tactical officer wondered. They got their answer when the Torathi fleet reached weapons range. The human ships erupted with missile fire. Hundreds of projectiles streaked across space, far more than 40 ships should carry. The Torathi point defense systems engaged, shooting down most of the incoming fire. Most but not all. 17 missiles struck home. 3 Torathi cruisers took critical damage. It wasn't much against a fleet of 1,200, but it was something. The Torathi returned fire with overwhelming force. The first wave of plasma bolts tore through 5 human ships instantly. The converted haulers had no real armor, no shields worth mentioning. They died fast. But they kept firing. Alice watched from the station as her small fleet fought. Every ship was crewed by people she'd known for years. Teachers, farmers, miners, people who'd chosen peace, now choosing war. "Station commander, you should evacuate," her tactical officer urged. "Not yet," Alice replied. "They're buying us time, we use every second." The human ships fought with tactics that made no sense to Drenvik. They didn't try to protect themselves. They didn't maneuver for advantage. They just kept firing until they were destroyed. One mining vessel, its engines destroyed and hull breaching, used its last power to ram a Torathi destroyer. Both ships vanished in the explosion. "They're insane," Drenvik's officer said. "No," Drenvik replied, feeling something he hadn't experienced in decades, unease. "They're buying time, but for what?" 6 hours into the battle, only 3 human ships remained. They'd taken 60 Torathi vessels with them, far better than anyone expected. But the end was inevitable. Alice watched the last ship, a converted mining hauler called Persistent Dream, take fire from 20 Torathi cruisers. Its shields failed. Its hull buckled. But before it died, it transmitted one final message. The message reached Alice's station, then bounced to every human outpost in the sector, then all the way back to Earth. Proxima Station held for 8 hours. Earth needed 6. "Thank you for your sacrifice. Tell our families we bought them tomorrow." The Persistent Dream exploded. Alice felt tears on her face. 8 hours. 400 volunteers and 40 converted ships had held off 1,200 Torathi warships for 8 hours. "Commander, Torathi fleet is approaching the station," her officer reported. Alice activated the station's self-destruct sequence. They wouldn't give the Torathi the satisfaction of capture. "Broadcast to the fleet," she ordered. Drenvik received the transmission from the human station commander. The woman looked tired but unbroken. "You came here expecting fear," Alice said. "You found none. You came expecting surrender. You found defiance. and you came expecting an easy victory, but you wasted 8 hours on us." "8 hours means nothing," Drenvik broadcast back. Alice smiled. "It means everything, because while you were here, Earth was building, and now you're going to see what humans can do when you give us time to get angry." The station exploded before Drenvik could respond. His fleet had won, but at a cost of 60 ships, against cargo haulers and retirees. "Fleet Marshal," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from across our empire. Human ships are appearing in multiple systems, hundreds of them. They're attacking everywhere at once." Drenvik pulled up the tactical display. His blood ran cold. Human warships, real military vessels, were striking across 12 different Torathi systems simultaneously. Where had they come from? The intelligence reports said humans only had 200 military ships. The answer came in a transmission from Earth. Owen Hayes appeared on screen, speaking to the entire Torathi fleet. "You laughed when we declared war. You mocked our peaceful nature. You thought 8 hours meant nothing." Owen's voice was calm, almost gentle. "But in those 8 hours, our shipyards launched 2,000 warships, every one built in the 3 weeks since you murdered our medical personnel." Drenvik felt something he'd never experienced before: fear. "The people at Proxima Station weren't warriors," Owen continued. "They were farmers and teachers who chose to fight. Now imagine what happens when our actual military comes for you." The transmission ended. Across Torathi space, human fleets began their assault. The galaxy had awakened something it didn't understand, and now it would pay the price. The Torathi colony world of Reshvar had existed peacefully for 3 centuries. 2 million Torathi civilians lived there, farming the rich soil and raising their families far from the military campaigns of their empire. They knew about the war with humans, but it seemed distant, unimportant, something that happened in faraway space. Then the human fleet arrived. Civilian Administrator Keln watched through his office window as 20 human warships entered orbit. His hands trembled as he activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is Administrator Keln to all citizens. Human military forces are in orbit. Seek shelter immediately. Do not attempt to resist." He expected bombardment. The Torathi military doctrine was clear: orbital strikes first, ground forces later. Destroy infrastructure, break resistance, claim victory. Surely the humans would do the same. But the human ships didn't fire. Instead, they broadcast a message across every channel. "Attention Torathi civilians of Reshvar. This is Admiral Rebecca Hall of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are not here to harm you. Repeat, we are not targeting civilian populations. However, all military installations and government facilities will be destroyed in 60 minutes. Evacuate these areas immediately." Keln stared at the message in confusion. 60 minutes warning. Why would an invading force warn their targets? "It's a trick," his deputy said. "They want us to panic." "Maybe," Keln replied. "Or maybe they mean it. Either way, we evacuate the government district." 58 minutes later, the human fleet opened fire. Precision strikes hit the military bases, destroying weapons depots and command centers. The government buildings where Torathi officials coordinated empire business turned to rubble. But the residential areas, schools, hospitals, all untouched. Keln watched in amazement. The humans had the power to destroy everything. Instead, they chose precision. The human ground forces landed an hour later. Keln expected soldiers with weapons drawn, ready to execute prisoners. Instead, medical teams set up treatment stations. Engineers began repairing water systems damaged in the bombardment. Food shipments arrived for civilians displaced by the fighting. A human soldier approached Keln's shelter. He was young, barely out of his teens, carrying a medical kit instead of a rifle. "Sir, are you injured?" the soldier asked in broken Torathi. "I'm fine," Keln managed. "Why are you asking?" Our orders are to provide humanitarian aid to all civilians, the soldier explained. We're not at war with you, just your government. Across Torathi space, the same scene repeated in a dozen systems. Human forces struck hard against military targets while protecting civilian lives. It made no sense to Torathi commanders, who'd spent centuries believing that total war meant total destruction. Fleet Marshal Drenvik reviewed the reports in growing disbelief. The humans had captured 12 systems in 3 weeks, but civilian casualties were minimal. In some cases, human forces had actually improved living conditions by repairing infrastructure the Torathi military had neglected. They're making us look like monsters, his intelligence officer reported. Civilian populations in occupied territories are reporting better treatment under human occupation than they received from our own government. Drenvik slammed his fist on the console. How can we fight an enemy that won't act like an enemy? The answer came from an unexpected source. On the occupied world of Treshkul, a Torathi civilian uploaded a video to the galactic network. The video showed human medics treating Torathi children injured in the bombardment. It showed human engineers fixing schools. It showed human soldiers playing with Torathi younglings. The video went viral. Within days, millions of Torathi civilians were watching it, comparing it to their own government's propaganda about savage humans who would destroy everything. On Earth, Owen Hayes watched the same video. It showed exactly what he'd hoped for. The Torathi people were beginning to question their leaders. How long until their government collapses from within? His assistant asked. Not long, Owen replied. People can forgive a lot, but they can't forgive being lied to while their children suffer. Emperor Vashtor watched the same video and felt rage building. His perfect empire was crumbling, not from military defeat, but from moral collapse. His own people were turning against him. Bring me Fleet Marshal Drenvik, he ordered, immediately. When Drenvik arrived, the emperor was packing in his throne room like a caged predator. You told me the humans were weak, Vashtor snarled. You told me this war would be over in weeks. The humans fight unlike any enemy we've encountered, Drenvik tried to explain. They strike military targets with precision while protecting civilians. Our propaganda can't compete with their actions. Then change our actions, the emperor demanded. If they protect civilians, we target civilians. Show our people what happens to those who sympathize with the enemy. Drenvik felt ice in his veins. My emperor, that would violate every principle of warfare. The Galactic Council would. The Council is irrelevant, Vashtor screamed. I want total war, burn their colonies, kill their civilians, make them afraid. That's not who we are, Drenvik said quietly. The emperor stepped close, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. That's exactly who we are, or have you forgotten? Our empire was built on conquest, on strength, on making others fear us. Drenvik met his emperor's eyes and saw madness there. The war was breaking Vashtor's mind. I won't give that order, Drenvik said. Then you're relieved of command, the emperor replied. Guards, arrest this traitor. The throne room doors burst open, but instead of guards coming to arrest Drenvik, a group of military commanders entered. They wore the insignia of the Torathi fleet's highest ranks. We stand with Fleet Marshal Drenvik, the senior commander announced. We will not follow orders to target civilians. The humans have shown us what honorable warfare looks like. We will not become monsters to defeat them. Emperor Vashtor stared in disbelief. This is treason. This is sanity, Drenvik replied. The war is over, my emperor. Not because we lost militarily, but because we lost morally. The humans showed the galaxy who we really are, and our own people can't accept it anymore. The emperor reached for a weapon, but the commanders were faster. They restrained him gently but firmly. What happens now? One commander asked Drenvik. Now we contact the humans, Drenvik said. And we ask for something the Torathi Empire has never asked for before: peace talks. Owen Hayes received the transmission within hours. Drenvik's face appeared on screen, showing exhaustion and resignation. Ambassador Hayes, I am Fleet Marshal Drenvik of the Torathi military. Emperor Voshter has been removed from power due to mental instability. A provisional government is being formed. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. Owen studied the Torathi commander carefully. Surrender. Yes, Drenvik replied. We cannot win this war. More importantly, we should not win this war. Your forces have shown restraint and honor we could never match. Our own people see this. Our empire is fracturing because of it. What about Emperor Voshter? Owen asked. Under arrest, Drenvik said, awaiting trial for war crimes. The medical frigate attack was his personal order. Many of us didn't know until after it happened. Owen thought about the 12,000 dead, about Dr. Linda Walsh, who'd survived in an escape pod and now helped counsel other survivors, about the baby she'd saved, who would grow up never knowing her mother. I'll forward your request to my government, Owen said. But understand this: peace will require accountability. Everyone involved in targeting civilians will face justice. I understand, Drenvik replied, and I accept those terms. The transmission ended. Owen sat in silence, processing everything. 4 months ago, they declared war. Now the enemy was begging for peace. But the galaxy was still watching, and what happened next would define humanity's place in it for generations. The escape pod had drifted for 6 days before rescue came. Dr. Linda Walsh had kept the baby alive by sharing her own water ration and body heat. When the Earth Defense Fleet finally found them, Linda couldn't even speak. She just held out the child and collapsed. Now, 3 months later, she stood in the memorial garden on Earth, looking at 12,000 names carved into black stone. Each name represented someone who'd been on those medical frigates: colleagues, friends, people who dedicated their lives to healing. The baby she'd saved, now named Hope by the adoption agency, played nearby with other war orphans. Linda visited them every day. It helped a little. Dr. Walsh, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Linda turned to see Owen Hayes approaching. The diplomat looked older than his years, worn down by months of negotiation. Ambassador, she acknowledged, I heard the Torathi want peace. They do, Owen confirmed. Fleet Marshal Drenvik has agreed to full accountability, war crimes trials, reparations, everything we asked for. Linda studied the names on the wall, and Emperor Voshter. In custody, he'll face a galactic tribunal. Owen paused. The trial starts next week. We need witnesses, people who survived the attack. Would you be willing to testify? Linda touched one name on the wall: Sarah Kim, her closest friend. Sarah had been on the Mercy's hand when it exploded. They'd been planning to open a clinic together after the refugee mission. I'll testify, Linda said quietly. They need to hear what was lost. The trial took place on a neutral station, broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The tribunal consisted of judges from 7 different species, all chosen for their reputation of fairness. Emperor Voshter sat in a containment field, surrounded by guards. He looked smaller than Linda expected, just an old being who'd convinced himself that cruelty was strength. The prosecution presented evidence first: video of the attack, broadcast on Torathi entertainment networks, communications between Voshter and his commanders proving he'd personally ordered the strike, testimony from Torathi citizens who'd questioned the war and been executed for it. Then came the survivors. Linda walked to the witness stand on shaking legs. The entire galaxy was watching. She focused on the judges, trying to ignore the cameras. State your name and occupation, the lead judge requested. Dr. Linda Walsh, Chief Medical Officer of the frigate Gentle Hope. Tell us what happened in your own words. Linda took a breath. Then she told them everything. The refugees they'd saved. The children who'd survived the plague only to die in space. The mother who'd given up her spot in the escape pod. The baby named Hope who would never know her real mother's face. She didn't cry while testifying. The tears had all been spent weeks ago. She just spoke the truth, clear and unwavering. When she finished, Emperor Vostr laughed. The sound echoed through the silent courtroom. Judges stared in shock. Even the guards looked uncomfortable. "You speak of loss as if it matters," Vostr said. "War requires sacrifice. The weak die so the strong can thrive. This is natural law." The lead judge banged his gavel. "You are not permitted to speak unless asked a direct question." "Why not?" Vostr challenged. "You want truth. Here is truth. I am not sorry. Those medical ships were legitimate targets. If I could go back, I would give the same order. Strength must triumph over weakness." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Spectators shouted. Security moved to restore order. Linda just stared at the former emperor, seeing the absolute emptiness where compassion should exist. Owen Hayes stood to address the tribunal. "The prosecution rests. The evidence speaks for itself. This being ordered the murder of 12,000 civilians and feels no remorse. Justice demands accountability." The defense attorney, a Torathi appointed by the provisional government, stood slowly. He looked uncomfortable with his assignment. "The defense calls no witnesses," he said simply. "We cannot defend the indefensible. We can only ask the tribunal to consider that Emperor Vostr's actions do not represent all Torathi. Many of us oppose what was done. Many of us seek to build a better future." The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict came quickly. "Emperor Vostr, you are found guilty of war crimes against sapient beings. The tribunal sentences you to life imprisonment without possibility of release. You will spend your remaining years in confinement, reflecting on the lives you destroyed." Vostr laughed again. "Life imprisonment, why not execution? Are you too weak to kill me?" Admiral Rebecca Hall stood from her seat in the gallery. She'd been given permission to address the court for this exact moment. "We could execute you," Rebecca said calmly. "It would be easy, perhaps even satisfying, but that would make us like you. We choose something harder. We choose to let you live with what you've done. Every day you'll wake up knowing you failed, knowing your empire rejected you, knowing history will remember you as a monster." She stepped closer to the containment field. "Death is an escape," Rebecca continued. "Life is the real punishment. You'll have decades to think about the children you killed, the families you destroyed, and you'll do it knowing that humanity chose mercy when we could have chosen vengeance." "Mercy is weakness," Vostr spat. "No," Rebecca replied. "Mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism, and that's something you'll never understand." The guards led Vostr away. He went still laughing, convinced of his righteousness even in defeat. Fleet Marshal Drenvik approached Rebecca after the verdict. The Torathi commander looked exhausted, his multiple limbs hanging with fatigue. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not executing him. Some of my people wanted death. They thought it would bring closure." "Death brings nothing," Rebecca replied. "Justice brings closure, accountability, truth. That's what your people need now." Drenvik nodded slowly. "The provisional government wants to begin formal peace negotiations. We're prepared to make significant concessions, reparations to the victims' families, dismantling of our military aggression doctrines, educational reforms to teach future generations about the war's true cost." "And what about you?" Rebecca asked. "What will you do after peace comes?" "Retire," Drenvik said. "I've spent 40 years in military service, most of it wrong. I need to spend my remaining years trying to make amends." "How?" "I'm establishing a foundation," Drenvik explained, "using my personal wealth to support war orphans, both Torathi and human, children like the one Dr. Walsh saved. They deserve better than the world we created through violence." Rebecca studied the Torathi commander. She'd fought against him for months, destroyed his fleets, occupied his worlds. Now here he stood, trying to build something good from the ashes. War is easy, Rebecca said. Peace is hard. Building trust after betrayal, that's the real challenge. I know, Drenvik replied. But watching your forces treat my people with dignity when you could have destroyed them taught me something. If humans can show mercy to their enemies, surely we can learn to do the same. The peace negotiations began the following week. Owen Hayes led the human delegation. Drenvik led the Torathi reformists. The talks were difficult, painful, full of hard truths. But they kept talking. Dr. Linda Walsh returned to her work, opening the clinic she'd planned with Sarah Kim. She named it after her lost friend. The first patient was a Torathi child injured during the war. Linda treated her with the same care she'd shown the human refugees. Because that's what healers did. They healed, regardless of species or past crimes. Baby Hope grew up in the memorial garden, playing among the names of the lost. When she was old enough, Linda would tell her the truth, about the mother who'd sacrificed everything, about the war that had taken so much, about the peace that had been built from ashes. But for now, the child just played, laughing in the sunshine. And that laughter was the real victory. The Torathi refugee camp on the border world of Keshet held 15,000 displaced civilians. They'd fled the fighting, leaving everything behind. Now they lived in temporary shelters, uncertain of their future. Most expected human forces to treat them poorly. After all, their empire had started the war. Instead, human aid workers arrived with food, medicine, and building materials. A young Torathi mother named Selva watched in confusion as human engineers constructed permanent housing. Her daughter, barely 3 years old, clung to her side, frightened of the strange bipedal aliens. "Why are they helping us?" Selva asked the camp administrator. "I don't know," the administrator admitted. "But they've been working for 2 weeks straight. No demands, no conditions, just building." A human engineer approached, carrying a tablet with translation software. Her name tag read Patricia Wung. "Excuse me," Patricia said in halting Torathi. "We're planning the school building. How many children need classrooms?" Selva blinked in surprise. "School? You're building a school?" "Of course," Patricia replied, as if it was obvious. "The children have missed months of education already. We need to get them learning again." "But why would you care about Torathi children?" Selva asked. "We're your enemies." Patricia knelt down to the little girl's level. "Hey there, sweetie, what's your name?" The child hid behind her mother's legs. "This is Kira," Selva said softly. Patricia smiled gently. "Hi, Kira, you know what? I have a daughter about your age back on Earth. Her name is Lily. And I'm building this school thinking about her, because every child deserves to learn and grow no matter where they're from." She stood and looked at Selva directly. "You asked why we care. It's simple. Your government made choices. You didn't. Kira didn't. Punishing innocent people for their leaders' crimes isn't justice. It's just more cruelty." Selva felt tears on her face. For the first time in months, she felt something other than fear. On Earth, the protests started small. A few hundred people gathered outside the Unified Assembly Building, carrying signs demanding an end to aid programs for Torathi refugees. "Why are we helping them?" one protester shouted. "They killed our people." The crowd grew daily. Within a week, 10,000 people marched through the streets. The media covered it extensively, showing angry citizens demanding that resources be spent on human needs instead of enemy civilians. Owen Hayes watched the protests from his office window. His assistant stood beside him, worried. "The polls show 60% of Earth's population opposes the refugee aid program," the assistant reported. "Congressional representatives are calling for a vote to cut funding." "I know," Owen replied quietly. Sir, if we lose the vote, it undermines everything we're trying to build. The peace process depends on showing the Torathi people that we're different from their old government. Owen turned from the window. Then we need to remind our own people why we're doing this. Schedule a public address, prime-time broadcast. I want every human colony to see it. The broadcast began that evening. Owen sat at a simple desk, no grand staging or dramatic lighting, just a man talking to his people. My fellow humans, he began, I know you're angry, I know you're hurt. 12,000 of our people died in an unprovoked attack. I attended their memorial. I spoke with the survivors. I understand the rage you feel because I feel it too. He paused, letting the words sink in. But I want to tell you about a woman named Selva. She's Torathi. She's living in a refugee camp on Keshet with her 3-year-old daughter Kira. Selva didn't attack our medical ships. She didn't vote for the war. She's just a mother trying to keep her child safe. Owen pulled out a tablet showing images from the camp. Children playing, families eating meals together, human workers building homes. When our engineers arrived at the camp, they could have done the minimum. But instead, they're building a school. Not because they have to, but because they see children who need education. They see families who need hope. He set the tablet down. Some of you are asking why we help our enemies, but here's what I learned during the war. The Torathi people were never our enemies. Their government was. Emperor Vashtar was. The commanders who ordered civilian attacks were. But Selva, Kira, they're just people caught in the crossfire of decisions they never made. Owen leaned forward, his voice growing stronger. We won this war not just with superior tactics or technology. We won because we showed the galaxy what humanity stands for. We protected Torathi civilians even while fighting their military. We treated prisoners with dignity. We built while others destroyed. If we stop now, if we abandon those principles because helping is hard or unpopular, then we lose everything we fought for. We become just another empire that only cares about its own people. And that's not who we are. He stood, the camera following. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm not asking you to forgive those who murdered our people. They'll face justice. Emperor Vashtar is in prison for life. Others will join him. Accountability matters. But I am asking you to see the difference between justice and revenge. Justice holds the guilty accountable. Revenge punishes everyone, including the innocent. We chose justice, and that choice defines who we are as a species. Owen pointed at the camera, directly at his audience. So yes, we're helping Torathi refugees. We're building schools and homes. We're providing food and medicine. Because that's what the crew of the Gentle Hope would have wanted. They died trying to save people. Should we honor their memory by abandoning those same principles? The broadcast ended. Owen sat down heavily, exhausted. How do you think it went? His assistant asked. I have no idea, Owen admitted. The response came quickly. Within hours, the protests began to shrink. Counter-protests appeared, people carrying signs supporting the aid programs. Citizens organized donation drives for the refugee camps. A veteran who'd lost her leg in the war appeared on a news program. I fought because I believe humanity is better than those who started this war, she said. If we abandon that belief now, then what did I lose my leg for? The congressional vote happened 3 days later. The refugee aid program was not only maintained, but expanded. Additional funding was approved for reconstruction in former Torathi territory. Back at the Keshet refugee camp, Patricia Wong showed Selva the completed school building. It had classrooms, a library, a playground, and a cafeteria. It's beautiful, Selva whispered. Little Kira ran inside, exploring the colorful classrooms designed specifically for Torathi children's needs. She found a reading corner filled with books in her own language. How did you know what we needed? Selva asked. We asked, Patricia replied simply. We talked to Torathi educators. We researched your culture. We wanted to build something meaningful, not just functional. Selva watched her daughter play, seeing joy on Kira's face for the first time since the war began. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. Thank you for seeing us as people. Patricia put a hand on Selva's shoulder. That's what humanity does. We see people, not enemies, not statistics, people. Across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. The Quelari upgraded their own refugee programs. The Veshkari began incorporating human diplomatic principles into their conflict resolution protocols. Even the warlike Dranth reconsidered their approach to conquered populations. The war had changed humanity, but more importantly, it had changed the galaxy's understanding of what strength really meant. Fleet Marshal Drenvik visited the Keshet camp during his tour of reconstruction sites. He watched Torathi children playing in the school built by human hands and felt shame. We could have done this, he told Patricia. We had the resources, the knowledge, we just never cared enough. Then care now, Patricia replied. Help us build more, teach your people what you learned. Drenvik nodded slowly. I will, it's the least I can do. Healing had begun. 10 years had passed since the war ended. The memorial garden on Earth had grown, filled with flowering plants donated by species from across the galaxy. Each flower represented a commitment to peace. Dr. Linda Walsh walked through the garden with Hope, now 13 years old. The girl had grown tall and curious, asking endless questions about everything. Tell me about my mother again, Hope requested. Linda had told this story hundreds of times, but it never got easier. Her name was Christina Park. She was a botanist, traveling on the medical frigate to study plants that could help cure the plague. When the attack came, she made sure you survived. Hope touched the memorial wall, finding Christina's name among the thousands. Do you think she'd be proud of who I'm becoming? I know she would be, Linda replied. You're studying medicine, following in her footsteps, and mine. Hope smiled. I want to work with the Torathi Human Medical Exchange Program, help build clinics in the border regions. Linda felt her heart swell with pride. The child she'd saved from death now wanted to dedicate her life to healing the wounds of war. On the former Torathi capital world, now renamed Unity Prime by mutual agreement, Fleet Marshal Drenvik stood before a classroom of mixed students. Half human, half Torathi, all learning together. Can anyone tell me why the war happened? Drenvik asked. A young human boy raised his hand. Because Emperor Voster ordered an attack on medical ships. That's when it started, Drenvik acknowledged. But why did he give that order? A Torathi girl spoke up. Because he believed strength meant cruelty. He thought making others fear us made us powerful. And what did the war teach us? Drenvik pressed. The students answered together, a lesson they'd learned well. Real strength is protecting the weak, not exploiting them. Drenvik nodded, satisfied. He taught this class 3 times a week, alongside his work with the War Orphan Foundation. It was his way of making amends. He'd never erase what he'd done during the war, but he could shape a better future. After class, a young Torathi approached him nervously. Sir, my grandfather served in your fleet. He was killed during the Battle of Treshkul. I wanted you to know I don't blame you. Drenvik felt the familiar weight of guilt. Thank you, but I am still responsible for the choices I made. I know, the student replied. But you're also responsible for the choices you're making now. My teacher is a war criminal trying to build peace. That matters. Owen Hayes, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, proposed a new resolution. The council chamber was packed with representatives from 60 species. The Hayes Accords, as you've reviewed them, establish clear protections for civilians during conflict, Owen explained. Medical personnel must be protected. Humanitarian corridors must be maintained. War crimes will be prosecuted by an independent tribunal. The Torathi representative stood. The Provisional Government of Unity Prime fully supports this resolution. We learned the cost of ignoring such principles. Let our mistake become the galaxy's lesson. The vote was unanimous. The Hayes Accords became galactic law. After the session, the Quelari ambassador approached Owen. Your species has changed the galaxy. Before the war, might made right. Now, restraint is valued over aggression. We just reminded everyone what civilization means, Owen replied. The capacity for violence exists in every species. The choice to control that violence, that's what matters. Admiral Rebecca Hall, retired from active service, worked at the Joint Human-Torathi Military Academy. She taught a course called Ethics in Warfare to officer candidates from both species. Today we're discussing the Battle of Keshet, she told her class. I commanded the human forces that day. Who can tell me what made that battle significant? A Torathi cadet answered. It was the first battle where human and Torathi forces fought together against Emperor Voshter's loyalist fleet. Correct, Rebecca confirmed. 6 months earlier we'd been enemies, then we were allies. What changed? A human cadet spoke up. We realized we were fighting for the same thing: peace, justice, a better future. Rebecca pulled up footage from the battle. It showed human and Torathi ships coordinating perfectly, protecting each other's flanks, sharing resources. This is what victory really looks like, Rebecca said. Not one side dominating the other, but former enemies choosing cooperation over conflict. In the memorial garden, a ceremony was taking place. Survivors from both sides gathered to dedicate a new monument. It showed a human and a Torathi figure, hands clasped, reaching toward the stars together. Selva attended with her daughter Kira, now 13, and enrolled in the Unity Prime Academy. The girl who'd once hidden from humans now studied alongside them daily. Mom, is that the engineer who built my school? Kira pointed to Patricia Wang. It is, Selva confirmed. Kira ran over to greet Patricia, hugging the woman who'd shown her family kindness when they needed it most. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for all who died. Then speakers from both species shared their stories, not of hatred or revenge, but of loss and healing. Dr. Linda Walsh spoke, her voice steady. We gather here not to celebrate war, but to remember its cost. 12,000 humans died in the initial attack, 40,000 more in the fighting that followed, 60,000 Torathi military and civilian casualties. Those numbers represent parents, children, friends, dreams that will never be fulfilled. She gestured to the monument. But they also represent a choice. We could have let those deaths breed eternal hatred. Instead, we chose to build something better. Every school we build together, every clinic we staff with mixed crews, every friendship between former enemies, that's how we honor the fallen. Hope stood beside her, now old enough to understand the full weight of her survival. My mother died so I could live. I won't waste that gift by perpetuating the hatred that killed her. I'll spend my life building bridges. The applause was thunderous. As the ceremony ended, Owen and Drenvik stood together before the monument. The human diplomat and the Torathi military commander, once adversaries, now friends. Do you think it will last? Drenvik asked. This peace we've built. Owen considered the question carefully. Peace isn't something you achieve and keep forever. It's something you choose every single day. As long as we keep choosing it, yes, it will last. Drenvik looked at the mixed crowd, humans and Torathi mingling freely. My people have a saying, the sword that draws first blood drinks deepest. We started this war. We should have been destroyed for it. But you weren't, Owen replied. Because destruction doesn't build anything. We chose reconstruction, reconciliation, and look what we built together. They watched as human and Torathi children played together in the garden, laughing and chasing each other through the flowers. Those children had no memory of the war. They only knew peace. That's the real victory, Owen said softly. Not what we destroyed, but what we built. Not who we killed, but who we saved. Not the war we fought, but the peace we created afterward. Drenvik nodded, a gesture of agreement that transcended species. Future generations will study this war. What do you think they'll learn? I hope they'll learn that strength without mercy is just brutality. That victory without justice is just another form of defeat. And that the hardest battles aren't fought on battlefields, but in the hearts of those who choose peace over revenge. The sun set over the memorial garden, casting long shadows across the monument. The clasped hands of the human and Torathi figures seemed to glow in the fading light, a symbol of hope reaching toward the stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species watched and learned. They saw what humanity and the Torathi had built from the ashes of war. They saw former enemies becoming partners, allies, friends. And they began to understand that real strength wasn't measured in weapons or victories. It was measured in the courage to choose peace, the wisdom to offer mercy, and the determination to build something better than what came before. The war was over. The healing continued. And in that healing, the galaxy found hope for a future where conflicts ended not in destruction, but in understanding. The Human-Torathi alliance stood as proof that even the deepest wounds could heal, if both sides chose to let them. That was the legacy of the war. Not the battles fought or lives lost, but the choice to build peace from the ruins of hatred. And that legacy would endure for generations to